This week on the It's a Monkey podcast.
You also have to be very comfortable with the uncomfortable. You have to be willing to adapt or die. And in Facebook's case, when a new department or division or product comes up, they're really aggressively trying lots of different things. In general, I think they have like a very focused and structured approach, but there's also like, hey, let's see how this works. Let's see how this lands. Be thoughtful about the data, look at the data, and then let that inform how we build the product.
Good morning, good evening, hello, wherever you are in the world. My name is Kevin Garber. It is Thursday, the 16th of November, 2017, the date that we are recording this podcast. You're probably listening to it a few days later. Coming to you live or semi-live from downtown Sydney, Australia. I am the CEO of ManageFlitter, co-founder of ManageFlitter, soon to be Managed Social as well. As usual, I have my co-host with me, Kate Frappell, who is the design lead at ManageFlitter and Managed Social. But Kate's been in Canada for the last few months or so. She's moved to Canada to have a work abroad. Lucky that Kate's come back for a short stint, and I'm sitting with her in the It's a Monkey podcast studio. So we haven't done an in-person podcast recording for a few months, Kate.
Yes, coming up to nearly 6 months.
It's gone really, really quickly. So, if you're new to this podcast, welcome. We talk about everything relating to tech, startups, political economy. Some of the topics we cover are blockchain, which we've covered a lot. And boy, has there been exciting activity in the Bitcoin and blockchain world over the last week. I don't think we're going to talk about it all that much on this week's podcast. But we cover all sorts of interesting topics, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles. We talk about how technology affects society. We start off the podcast with some news, and then we go to a long-form interview. Today's long-form interview is Scott Smith, who's VP of Sales at CloudApp. And I had a great chat with him about Facebook, interestingly, because Scott used to work at Facebook, working on the team that... It's the Workplace by Facebook, which is kind of a Facebook for business mixed with Slack product. Yeah. And I had a great chat with him about Facebook, also about their app, CloudApp, and how that's going, and customer acquisition and all sorts of interesting bits and pieces. So that's coming up later on in the show. But as usual, we tackle a couple of news items because it is our industry moves so fast that we like to give you a little bit of a taste of what's going on. I learn myself by when we're looking at these news items. So I hope it's interesting for you too. Twitter, we're going to talk about Twitter. Twitter's been in the news the last 10 days or so. Lots of changes at Twitter. Of course, Twitter, since its founding, has always been a little bit rock and roll. It's been through probably three or four CEOs. Share price has been all over the place. I, of course, love Twitter. Still my favorite social media network. I loved it so much that I built a company on top of it. But it's definitely one of the more rock and roll social media platforms. But over the last 10 days, they've made some interesting changes, one of which is they've doubled the tweet character count from 140 to 280. That semi came as a surprise. I know they said they were experimenting a few months ago, but overnight they just announced that it's happening today, and boom, they rolled it out. I have to say, Kate, that it felt like it was a real paradigm shift, and the world's never going to be the same. But life's pretty much gone on in the Twitter world, right?
That's true. I think a lot of people were complaining and making really sort of funny, sarcastic jokes and forcefully making their tweets super long. But over time, I think, as Twitter even said themselves, they did tests, and people are actually naturally tweeting shorter. So they're already tweeting 140. So once the novelty wears off, people are going to go back to 140 anyway.
Well, Dick Costello, who was the previous CEO at Twitter before Jack, who's now the CEO and he's the founder of Twitter, one of the founders, I remember specifically an interview with him where they questioned him, would you ever increase the tweet limit? And he said, never. It's sacrosanct. It's what makes Twitter special. It just shows you, in life, you really can never say never. It's, life today, tomorrow, next week might be very different to life in 2-3 years. So you can really never say never. But I think I've been on Twitter since the very early days, and I wish we could go back to Twitter before images even, so change is, in a way, it's like the place that you grow up is always going to have a special place in your heart and is always going to really define the way that you see the world. And Twitter, for me, is a little bit like that. So for me, the 280, I don't particularly... It's made my tweet stream on TweetDeck more cluttered, and it's more difficult to scan, which what I really like about Twitter is that it moves really, really fast, and you can scan a lot of tweets really quickly. And this has introduced a lot more content, making it really difficult to scan and really difficult for me to just keep an eye on my TweetDeck and see what's happening there. So for me, it hasn't really added value directly to the way that I consume the network, the content on the network, but who knows going forward.
Yeah, but in a way, it also makes sense. So Twitter sort of got built on the back of SMS messaging, which had limited characters as well.
160.
Yes, yeah, 160 characters for SMS, and then Twitter made it 140. People were, that sort of Generation X got used to that, built around that. But now the new users, I guess, are more millennial users who grew up with Apple messaging and no restraints, lots of images, lots of emojis, and it's moving in that direction. So in a way, it's sort of helping Twitter move into the next phase.
Yeah, I agree. And, these products have to keep evolving, have to keep moving. Certainly, they definitely know their product more than I do, as much as I feel I do know their product very, very well. But it's definitely was a significant move, because Twitter still is one of the dominant platforms. It still is dominant in politics, sports, celebrities, real-time news. So it was an exciting change. They also rolled out at a very similar time that you can increase your character. You have up to 50 characters in your, not so much in your username, but in your username description, right?
Yeah, so your display name is now 50 characters long, but your handle or your username, so with the @ in front of it, is still limited to 15.
15.
Yeah.
Why do you think they increased that?
Not too sure. I mean, in Twitter's, when they sort of announced it, they said, go ahead and fill in your middle name, add some extra emojis. So whether people's names are getting longer, I don't think so. But then again, why would you do that if the handle's still shorter? So it's not like you could, if you had a really long name and you want to include your middle name, wouldn't you want your username to be the same as your display name?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about why they increased the length and you can put emojis. Maybe it was the emoji thing.
Maybe. I have seen people do interesting things with it. Some that sort of make jokes, but others, Madeline, who does our Twitter chats, she has her name, an emoji, and then sort of what she's known for. So she says podcasting, Twitter chats, and puts that next to her name. So maybe it's good for SEO.
Yeah, who knows? It'll be interesting to see. I have to say, I'm not an emoji person.
No,
I'm not an emoji person.
I love them, but I wouldn't say I'm an emoji person. I don't use them ridiculously, but I actually love the idea of them.
What do you love about it?
I think that they're just a really good, I guess, another language, and they communicate sentiment in text messages that you normally wouldn't get. So it alleviates a lot of miscommunication and a lack of understanding for some people. Yeah, I actually did this whole podcast I listened to, and an article this guy wrote about how he submitted the Lotus pose, which is on the new iOS, to the emoji committee. So it's actually not Apple that decide, and Android and Facebook. They all have to answer to the emoji committee. So the designs can differ a little bit, but anyone in the world can actually design and put forward their ideas for a new emoji.
But there are some Apple emojis that don't work on Android, because some of my friends who have Apples will text me something and it just comes through as nothing, or a character space. So
I actually think that's because Android don't have that emoji.
Right.
But if the universal language might have, I don't know how many there is, but thousands, and Android may only take a few hundred.
Okay.
In which case, the ones that are missing just show up blank or as
So
squares.
it's not, I thought it was like an Apple proprietary emoji not coming through.
I don't think so. I think the designs are proprietary, as in like they all have their own little twist to them, but they have to abide by the emoji library, which is a separate committee.
But they're not proprietary in the sense of they're created by Apple, and they don't let Android access certain emojis, etc.
No, not that I could tell. No, which is why I found it interesting, because another use case. So this guy did the whole process of submitting the lotus position. So it was like sort of communicates yoga and peace and all that sort of stuff. Another example was a student, and she had like a Muslim background, and so she put forward to put a girl with a hijab on, and that got through the latest iOS as well. And she was just a student at a university, I think.
We need to. I'm going to research this emoji, the emoji standards and the emoji committee, and see what gets through and why I don't receive some from my friends. Not that I particularly care, but I don't know. Maybe it's just an age thing, and I just. I grew up in the world of text, and it's just somehow, I don't even know, besides smiley faces and sad faces, I don't think I use them ever.
I think if you had an iPhone, you'd use them more, because you can use them. I'm not sure about your phone, but in Apple, it's actually a language. So you can add like your English keyboard, German keyboard, emoji keyboard. And so on mine, I just have English and emoji keyboards, and I can access them. I can alternate between the two.
I'm sure I can do something similar with Android.
Yeah, but I think it's good. I mean, some of the basic like smiley face emojis too have communicated more. I think it's been around probably the last iOS that came out, but there's it's a face, and it's a thinking face, but it's got like the sort of the thinking hand on the chin. I use that one all the time. I never used to touch it. It just communicates like, I wonder.
I prefer to write asterisk thinking asterisk.
Nah. Emoji's much
What
clearer.
What you're witnessing here is the generation gap. No, but actually older people, like much older people, also seem to really like emojis, right?
Yes, some of them go crazy.
Yeah, some of them go crazy because I think they don't like typing. So they just... anyway, we will look into that emojis. We'll chat about it next podcast. Another really interesting news story is that the FDA approved the first digital pill. Tell us about that.
So it's basically a sensor the size of a grain of sand inside a pill that the user somebody that needs it takes. And the sensor talks to a patch that the individual puts on their left rib cage. And then the patch talks to your phone through Bluetooth. So it can send information about like when you took the pill, the dosage of the pill. And the patch itself also does a number of other things on the side, like it's activity tracker, step tracker, health checker, things like that. But the actual sensor itself goes through your body and just passes naturally. But yeah, it can provide, whether it's probably just when you need to top up, if you need to take another one.
That's cool. I mean, sometimes also people forget when they've taken a pill, or sometimes they even forget if they've taken a pill.
Yeah.
So people who have to take daily medications, and I assume women who take the contraceptive pill might hit across this every now and then, and they use manual methods of, little containers labeled days of the week and things like that. But this way you could actually track when you took a pill.
And took it, yeah. And you can also inside the app. So this whole thing is called Abilify My Site, and you can, as the user, I can define how many people can view my information. So if it's a child, for example, they can share that data with 4 other people. So a doctor and their parents, for example.
Interesting. So it's made of silicon, copper, and magnesium. An electrical signal is activated when the sensor comes into contact with stomach acid. The sensor then passes through the body naturally. I mean, the only downside about this is putting more crap into your body.
As long as it passed, though, I think it would be fine. Only be if it got trapped inside your gizzard somewhere.
Which is always a possibility. The patch also records activity levels, sleeping patterns, steps taken, activity, and heart rate, and must be replaced every so that's the patch side of things.
So you would also have to wear a patch all the time, which, depending, like I have sensitive skin, so wearing that type of stuff and Band-Aids is always a bit of a pain.
Interesting. Interesting. I still wish they'd put all this technology into food in my fridge, so I would know what's in my fridge, at what state of freshness it is, and get notifications about it.
Yeah, it'd be handy. I feel not a pill, but I think there is an app that started to do that.
Yeah, there was that TechCrunch hackathon that they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this pill is definitely interesting, and I think of the next phase would be a pill that we swallow that, some nanotechnology that hangs out in our body.
Yeah, potentially. This pill actually is for schizophrenia, bipolar,
Right.
and is an add-on treatment for depression. So at this stage, mental health.
Which is interesting because probably people with severe mental health, regularity of taking pills and things like that is probably a challenge, and people forget or double up, and to have a carer be able to track what's going on.
Yeah, invaluable.
I mean, I'm thinking of times friends were in hospital, particularly elder people, and the nurses regularly asking, "Have you taken your pills?" Right?
Yeah, they're really strict about that stuff. I've just recently been in hospital visiting a family member, and it was only over paracetamol as well, but they were very like, "Why didn't you take your paracetamol?
Yeah.
It's in the system. We marked it in there." So it's like, I didn't feel like it.
So you can picture a nurse sitting at a nurse's station, right, with a big screen, and almost getting exceptional events when someone has either taken too many or hasn't taken their pill. It pops up almost like a monitoring system of ManageFlitter. When we get a notification something's wrong, you can investigate it.
Or even if they didn't even get alerted, just change the data.
Yeah.
For that patient. So, they didn't take it, so we better take that off. Yeah. Make it correct.
Very, very interesting. I wonder what's the price of this? Are they expensive?
I'm not too sure, actually.
And of course, there's privacy concerns as well, where if it gets hacked, people can see what type of pills you're taking and when and how. But that's the price. It's the price to pay. I mean, all our data, everything's out there the whole time. So
you got to put it on the blockchain.
Put it on the blockchain. The blockchain is the answer to every question, right? Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, that's we'll put the show notes up on itsamonkey.com. Previous episodes are there as well. We've had some great interviews about the blockchain in previous episodes. We're going to take a short break, and after the break, we're going to talk to Scott Smith from CloudApp. He's the Vice President of Sales at CloudApp, and we had a great chat about his time working at Facebook, Workplace at Facebook, the product which you probably even haven't heard of. My guess is you haven't heard of. Kate, do you know anyone using that product?
No, I don't. I know we did discuss it.
We have discussed
here
it
at one stage, yeah.
Yeah. We have discussed it, and I think I get some emails from Facebook every now and then trying to get them to prompt me to try it and to use it. But yeah, it hasn't. You don't hear much about it. So we're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back with my interview with Scott Smith.
Hi, my name is Jo Pinto. I'm the Business Operations Manager here at ManageFlitter. Did you know that ManageFlitter can help you quickly and cheaply build an organic following on Twitter? Let me explain in 6 easy steps. Step 1. Find new prospects on Twitter with Power Mode, ManageFlitter's advanced Twitter search feature. Step 2. Easily filter and sort results to find the most relevant Twitter accounts for you to follow. Step 3. Follow these Twitter accounts using ManageFlitter's simple interface. Step 4. Unfollow accounts that do not follow you back within 14 days. Step 5. Watch your Twitter follower numbers grow as high-quality accounts follow you back. Step 6. Rinse and repeat to maintain consistent organic Twitter account growth. Feel free to drop by manageflitter.com to trial our product or email us at contact@manageflitter.com to schedule an obligation-free walkthrough.
You're back with It's a Monkey podcast. My name is Kevin Garber. I am the CEO and co-founder of ManageFlitter, and we talk about everything relating to tech, entrepreneurship, the whole online world, remote work, etc., etc. And one of the themes that we have on the podcast is remote work and productivity and the like. And we're always talking about new products and new tools and new ways of doing things more efficiently. And Kate actually passed me on some details of an interesting product that actually helps with sort of productivity and especially remote work. It's called CloudApp, and I'm happy to say I've got the VP of Sales from the Bay Area, San Francisco, Scott Smith, at the end of my Skype line. Scott, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, before we get into the whole CloudApp side of things and what it does and how it can help people, particularly remote workers, but everyone, I was interested to see on your bio that you did quite a bit of work at Facebook, first as head of mobile platform partnerships and then sales manager of Workplace by Facebook. Now, Workplace by Facebook, a lot of people haven't heard about, but it's, for lack of a better way of describing it, it's kind of like Slack, but a Facebook version. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's probably an appropriate comparison. I think the easiest way to visualize it is a private, secure Facebook just for your business. So literally the news feed, the messaging, all without the ads, including the profiles. So basically just a place for you to chat in groups, Messenger, and then post things about what you're working on.
So I think one of the reasons people are so interested in Facebook, particularly entrepreneurs and people that build businesses or manage businesses or work in high growth companies, is they seem to have done so much right. They've seemed to have made it look so easy from the outside, right? And anyone that's worked in a startup or a company or even a corporate company knows how difficult growing, managing, and maintaining companies are. So what was it like on the inside? I'm sure it was a lot messier on the inside than it actually looks from the outside.
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the greatest advantages of working in a place like Facebook is that it really attracts really intelligent, highly motivated, great to work with people. The teams that you're building around you are those that they really care about what they're doing. They really care about what they're building, and they really want it to be something that's impactful and useful and that, a lot of people are going to use. So I think that really guides the company. And then I think from an executive perspective, what's unique about Mark Zuckerberg is that he's so thoughtful and visionary about how he wants the world to be able to communicate. And he builds products that sometimes they might initially seem, like they're off the mark, but very quickly people realize that it was entirely the right idea.
And how does Facebook internally deal with criticism? There's a lot of criticism ranging from whether it's privacy issues or whether it's that Facebook copies its competitors and often does a lot better job. I saw a graphic yesterday of Snapchat versus Instagram stories. Wow, it's just where Instagram stories is just a vertical growth and Snapchat is just flattening. So they're definitely good at capitalizing on opportunities. Is there a lot of debate inside the company around some of these more contentious areas about the product or about things like privacy and freedom of speech, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically the reason that the Workplace product that we talked about before came out was essentially because Facebook wanted to have, avenues and conduits for people to share their opinions more broadly than within their teams and their business groups. So Facebook at Work initially built Workplace to help people share those ideas, really get support and rally behind them, and then also just allow people to have divergent and different perspectives. So yeah, I think as far as handling criticism, I think in general they do it really well. Just like any other company, sometimes it can be a bit slow, but for the most part, everyone is very aware of what's being said. They're always trying to figure out like the best and right response, and to do that in a way that when you have 2 billion users, you have to be very thoughtful. So I think that's a really important part of their kind of approach is initially internally heavily discussing just about everything. I think a good example of that is they had a product a couple of years ago, essentially, talked about emergencies and high stress, almost terrorism-like situations, and it was being used relatively infrequently. This feature basically said that you were marked as safe, and internally, more people wanted to be able to use this with events that were happening locally and regionally. It was heavily discussed, and then it was implemented more broadly to help create this kind of safety net where people could say they were safe, and that arose out of that internal conversation.
And I have to say, Sheryl Sandberg, I've read her book, her latest book, Option B, I think it's called, and she's just such a smart woman. I mean, wow, what a sharp, articulate person she is, what an asset to the company she is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually remember when I was working for one of the first startups I was at, and I happened to read her book, and I was frankly like enthralled. I was really enthusiastic about what she had to say and her approach to managing a family as well as a business, and her intensity in which she, like she always talks about, leaning forward and making yourself heard and recognized. And I think everyone needs to kind of think through the things in the same way. Well, and I think what's interesting about the option B is that, we all have these really terrible situations that happen in our lives, and we can choose what we're going to do about it. And this is a great book that reflects that kind of optimism and how to, think about how to handle those things.
Even the simplicity of just reducing it down to, if you don't have option A, just kick the shit out of option B. I mean, just that alone is just such a useful metaphor. And anyone that's been in on the entrepreneurial journey or been in a startup just knows that you have to confront a lot of option Bs along your path, whether it's certain products not landing up the way they should be, or technical issues, or PR disasters, or whatever it is, right? There's a lot of option Bs you just got to try and optimize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great that she kind of conveys that vulnerability, that idea that even at the best company in the world, one of the best companies in the world, and even as a leader and an innovator that seems so thoughtful and on top of everything, there's still challenges that for her, it's like she's got to fight through and defeat, and that's something that everyone can kind of get behind.
But at the same time, she's got a humility around her extreme privilege as well, which I really like as well. So she talks a lot about how much worse it could be if she wasn't so fortunate in terms of her wealth and her social standing, etc. But Scott, tell us about the workplace product. What is the reason why we haven't heard of it so much? Is it just that Facebook's actually pitching it to the enterprise and us in the small tech startups don't come across it? Or is it they just incubating it a little bit? I mean, it gets almost no talk. In the very early days, I remember we spoke a little bit about it on the podcast and we were quite excited about it. And then it's just sort of seems to have fizzled, at least from a consumer's.
Yeah, I think like there's tools that you can just self-sign up for and try out of the box, which is more akin to how Facebook has traditionally thought through how to build a product and get it into the hands of users. With Facebook at Work, they sort of went a different way initially, which was let's go to some of the best and brightest companies. Let's let them know that we're building this interesting product. Let's get their feedback incorporated into the building process. And let's be kind of quiet about it for a while until we feel like it's something that's been incubated in a way that's really good. And I think, and to contrast that, today, for example, there's an article in CNBC highlighting, an integration with both Salesforce and Quip that Facebook has just gotten behind. I think they're actually taking it very slowly and very methodically, and they're thinking through it like an enterprise business rather than maybe a consumer or B2C business, which is let's get it in the hands of users. Let's see how they feel right away. And in this case, they're doing more of like a slow, methodical rollout.
It would be really interesting to see if they can crack the enterprise market. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head companies that have managed to cross over so effectively. I'm sure they are. Maybe Microsoft is one of them that I can just think of initially that's managed to get the consumer and the enterprise, but they're vastly different animals that even in the DNA of your company would just have to be so different. Picture Facebook being this fast-growing consumer tech company versus the enterprise sales, where the sales cycle is just so terribly slow and tedious. And but if anyone can do it, they can, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think like they've done a couple things really well, particularly with respect to how they're building this business. So one of them, for example, is their VP, Julian Cornio. He used to be at Microsoft. He's got a long tenure in the enterprise space, and he helped build this kind of from the ground up. And as he's done that, he's hired people from Box and Microsoft and Google Cloud and a handful of more enterprisey companies. So, which is really interesting because like, if you look at the DNA of a lot of those folks elsewhere at Facebook, they don't have that background. They don't have that enterprise focus. It's not something that most Facebook employees, I think, are comfortable with. But with Julian's team, the team that he's built at Workplace, it's very enterprise focused. It's slower, longer sales cycles. Obviously, they do have that focus on kind of like a consumerization of IT, building a product that people really love and care about. But yeah, it's a different business. It's much slower. It's, there's a lot of different things that you have to think about, and that can definitely go wrong while you're doing that.
Do you know if it's on record if Facebook has ever tried to buy Slack?
I don't know if it's on record, and I don't know at all. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, it's one thing I've always been so impressed by Facebook as a sort of product focused CEO is the confidence they've had in iterating their product has just been absolutely second to none. And when you're a product owner, and you see this a little bit maybe with some other products, whether it be Snapchat or Twitter, where when something's working, at least to some degree, it takes a huge amount of confidence to just keep on going, making these left turns, iterating, because you don't want to lose your success to date. You don't want to make things worse in the attempt to make things better, to improve things. And Facebook have just continued to just iterate and move forward confidently, and for the most part has made things a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add that just probably like any other fast-growing, highly innovative, likely to change rapidly environment, you also have to be very comfortable with the uncomfortable. You have to be willing to adapt or die. And in Facebook's case, when a new department or division or product comes up, they're really aggressively trying lots of different things. In general, I think they have like a very focused and structured approach, but there's also like, hey, let's see how this works. Let's see how this lands. Be thoughtful about the data, look at the data, and then let that inform how we build the product.
Yeah, and of course the share price is reflective of all of this. It's been, I think it peaked at $186, so the market is loving all of this. So it'd be interesting to, I think, and this is definitely not financial advice, but I certainly think Facebook's got a long way to go. But anyway, let's get on to after Facebook, you're involved with this. I assume we can call it still a startup, CloudApp. Tell us a little bit about CloudApp, the motivation for it, what problem is it solving, and where you guys at with it all.
So it's actually kind of interesting. So the way that I got into Facebook was actually through the acquisition of a smaller company called Parse. Uh-huh. And Parse was basically a product that helped you build mobile apps. Right. Really great product, very developer focused. And the CEO of that company was an investor in this small startup CloudApp. And the previous company, the Parse that I was working at, the VP of sales or chief revenue officer, Kyle York, also an investor in this company. So I'd been working at Facebook for a while post that Parse acquisition, and they basically both had reached out to me and said, hey, we have this company. It's in its formative stages. It's less than 10 people. It has some really great customers. We need some help thinking through how to go to market. And when I talk with them about the product, and basically what the product is it's a simple and easy way to capture what you see on your screen and then share that with somebody. Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned Slack before. I think there's this movement where not everyone wants to spend time face-to-face on a call, in a web conference, actually talking on a Skype. They want to get their work done. They want to do things asynchronously. And what CloudApp allows you to do is just capture a video, a GIF, an image, and then mark it up and share it. So it could be a bug report that has a nice video in it. It could be a sales pitch that has a demo in it. And you can watch and you can consume at your leisure. So that's kind of the product, and that's how we came about. And we've been at it for a couple of years now, and we have great customers, companies like Zendesk and Atlassian, and a handful of other very small startups. So basically, we're trying to serve people who are building product and trying to do that as fast as they can, and to do that with as much context as they can. It's really tough to communicate.
So it's specifically targeted for people that are building product.
Yeah, I would say that initially it was very much focused on product managers, engineers, and developers. And you would see that in the initial companies that signed up and bought, this product. So we have the CEOs of Atlassian and Foursquare and a handful of others that use the product to help build their companies. And then as a result of this really interesting tool that helps you communicate visually, we've also happened to get users that are on support teams and sales teams. I should say customer support people are trying to explain things and resolve tickets faster. So if they have like a video or an image or a GIF in that ticket gets responded to faster or closed faster. So it's been one of these things where we started with an audience of engineering, product, and development, and it's expanded into other departments that include, support, sales, marketing. Everyone that wants to be able to create visual content very quickly, we help them do that.
Is it a competitive space?
There's definitely a handful of tools that do this. from simple screenshot. There's numerous Chrome extensions that do this. There's old tools like Jing and Sketch that Evernote acquired. There's a handful of new companies that are trying to combine and consolidate all these different tools. So, I mean, if what we're basically doing is combining things like Sketch and Jing into, as well as, QuickTime, screen recording, and then a tool like maybe Giphy, all in one, encapsulated. So yeah, there's a bunch of different services and tools that do what we do. We just try to bring it together into one workflow that's, easily accessible and relatively inexpensive.
So I'm looking at your pricing page now. It is actually pretty inexpensive, where $8 a month and a team is $9 per user per month, and business is $17 per user per month. So pretty reasonably priced.
Yeah, and that's on purpose. I think what we know and what we've seen is that everyone at a company can and does use it. We have companies where we literally have 80, 95% penetration, where every user across every department is using the product. And we don't want to make it so that it's something that it can only be used by marketing for $100 or $500 per user per month. So I think what we've tried to do is look at tools like Asana and Slack and Trello and say, this is great for everybody. It can be really useful in your role, and make it available and ubiquitous for them.
Are you guys all based in the Bay Area, or you're a distributed team, or what's your team structure?
Yeah, so I think early on we started, we're very much a local team in San Francisco. As we grew the business, I think we've added folks across the globe. So, we have folks in Canada, folks in Mexico, and then also in Poland. So I think what we've been able to find, and I don't know how many companies typically do this. Maybe it's a lot, but we've been really fortunate that really fantastic, enthusiastic, and passionate people who have used our product and really loved it have said, hey, can I come help you build that? So in our Mexico office, for example, where we have about 8 engineering and product folks, the first iOS developer that came to us, he said, hey, I've been using your product for a while. I'm a former OneLogin engineer. I love it. Can I help you build it? And then he happened to refer a friend that referred a friend that referred a friend. And then all of a sudden we had this fantastic team in a place that I think Silicon Valley doesn't really think about, which is outside of the Bay Area.
I think that's such a first prize, to get people that are passionate about your product and wanting to come work for you. Phil Libben from Evernote fame tells a story about when the business was about to run out of money in the very, very early days, and he was about to actually close the product. And he sent an email out to the users, and one of the users, I think in Sweden or in Europe somewhere, emailed back and said, hey, don't close the thing. I'll drop 500K into it if you keep on going and give me some equity. And of course, the rest is history. So amazing things can happen from your user base if you just hang in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually would echo that with CloudApp, not in terms of the shutting down part, but as far as we've been able to hire really fantastic people from our user base. We've actually been able to raise the majority of our investments so far, albeit still small, but the money that we have comes from users, enthusiastic users who put a lot of sweat equity as well as dollars into the business because they loved it so much and they wanted to make sure it stayed around. And it's helped us go from that sort of formative seed stage into that next evolution.
I think that's what's so great around, dare I call it, consumer products. I mean, it's not really, your product's similar to ours, where it's sort of bridges a little bit consumer and enterprise, but I guess products where you've got a direct contact with the end user, they will drive a lot of your development, which is what we found at ManageFlitter as well, as opposed to, I guess, the enterprise product where the person in a bank using a Oracle database or what, it's so many degrees removed away from the people developing the product that feedback will probably, never trickles back. But if you've got a direct line, boy, they can really drive your product development in wonderful ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can have both effects. One of them is that you get a endless fire hose of feedback and information because you're so close to the user and they feel like you're so accessible to them, which can be great, and it also can be detrimental and dangerous to your business. So I know that a lot of people look to guys like Steve Jobs and Henry Ford and say essentially like, I'm going to design the future and I'm going to feed it to you. And then you also have your customer base who advises you and encourages you to kind of do the right thing. And I think you have to strike a balance between both of those.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, that's the Henry Ford phrase of, if I would have asked for people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. That always has to be kept in mind as well, that sometimes sometimes we know better than our users, sometimes we don't, and and the art is knowing when which is which, and we have to stay humble to that. But we definitely need to stay tuned into both. Scott, tell us your customer acquisition strategy. I mean, some people who listen to this podcast have their own small businesses, or they're trying to get something going. What has worked for you guys and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's one that we're still figuring it out. I would say that there's basically been, a handful of different directions that we've taken. One of them that's been really useful and successful has been riding the coattails of other giants and successful companies. Mm-hmm. So what I mean in that is that we've built really fantastic integrations with companies like a Zendesk or an Atlassian Jira. And essentially what we do is we go into their marketplace, we build something that's great, and we make the feature and the functionality of that super useful for the customer. And we do our best to get companies like Zendesk and Jira to care about us, whether that's by going to their conferences, working with them on content, but very much working within that ecosystem has been very successful for us. I think the other customer strategy that's also been useful, both challenging and interesting, is similar to those integrations, but it's just taking advantage of the app marketplaces. So in our case, we have a Windows app in the Windows 10 store. We have a Mac app in the Mac App Store, and then we'll soon have a Chrome extension in the Chrome marketplace. And we've been able to add hundreds, thousands of more signups every month. The other unique, interesting strategy that we have is more as a result of the product. And I would actually say that if you look at something like the Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule, we get a huge amount of user signups essentially that come as a result of people using CloudApp. So the way that CloudApp works is you, let's say, create a screen recording of a bug. You put that bug as a short link into a tool like Jira or Trello, or even put it on Twitter. Somebody clicks it, reviews it, and they say, wow, this is pretty cool. I would love to be able to do this myself. And we have a little modal there that encourages you to sign up. Essentially, I think it's marketplaces and then building the functionality into the product that's really good so that people are encouraged to share it. And I feel like we have a unique, position there. The things that haven't worked very well, I don't know if I want to say they haven't worked well, but it's more, we're still figuring out how to do them better. Is, for example, I love Facebook and I'm happy to give them my money because I own their stock, but it's taken us some time to figure out the best strategy there. So we've used things like lookalike audiences to do targeted ads based on a similar profile of a customer. And we've gotten really high CPAs for those acquisitions. But that was based on bad content, bad images, the wrong messaging. And we've spent weeks and months working on this. And we created a short, essentially 30-second video with captioning that really captured what we did. And we dropped the CPA from $80 down to $15 per user. So I think it takes time, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of focus to keep working through it. And you take that hunch that you have and also like all the feedback other people have given you, and you see if you can make it work.
At your price point, do you guys ever do outreach or pounding the pavement to companies? I mean, it's a very high cost of sale if you need to do that, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, we do, absolutely. We relative to all the other efforts that we have, it's relatively small in terms of people and invested money. But we know, for example, that product engineering designers, they don't tend to like to get cold emails and cold calls. So while we tried talking with those folks briefly, we know that we have a higher likelihood of engaging with them on certain platforms, marketplaces, and integrations. On the other hand, I think we've had better success when we've said, okay, we know that there's a director, a leader of a technical support team. We do some cold outreach to them, share some really good content, case studies, messaging with them. I think in that case, we'll find a company with a couple hundred employees, a couple hundred support reps, and we'll focus on getting a trial or pilot. That's been the approach on some of the more outbound traditional sales, as well as some of that marketplace stuff. So yeah, I think both are really important. One thing that we've especially learned just doing the more traditional sales approach is that you get feedback much more quickly on how bad or how good your messaging is and how well or how badly you resonate with that person or that persona.
We've experimented over the years. I mean, we also a relatively cost-effective product. Our pricing starts at $12, so not too far from you as well. And what we found in the face-to-face is we've hosted parties with some guest speakers in New York. We put together a great party and tons of pizza and 4 guest speakers, and we just charged $10 for people to buy a ticket, and we got tons of users and in there, and that was a lot of fun as well. And people love seeing the face behind products they love as well, so they really enjoyed that as well. And I did as an experiment. When I was traveling a bit around the US, we geo-targeted a message on our app saying, hey, would you like to meet the ManageFlitter CEO? Fill out this form. And quite a few people in the different jurisdictions filled it out. And they were obviously ManageFlitter users. And I managed to have great coffees and lunches and say, hey, how are you using our product? And what would you like? And I met all these great users all over the country that fed back into the product and the relationship. So, yeah, sometimes you just got to try different things and be innovative. But I think it's a real hard reality of how difficult it is to get brand visibility. To be honest, I mean, Kate, my co-host, she helped organize the chat and interview and made me aware of the product, but I hadn't heard of the product, and I'm someone that spends half my day screenshotting shit, so the fact that I haven't bumped up against your product, and not to say I'm the be all and end all and need to know about all the products, but great product that I've just never bumped up against. So it's tough to get, brand visibility out there. It's a lot of work. It's a grind, and it's a noisy environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's also really easy to raise money that you then immediately put into a marketing agency, a creative agency, or an ads campaign where the results are not clear and you've wasted your money. And it sounds like you guys have been very thoughtful about how you spend your money, and I think we've tried to be the same way. Interestingly, I love your point about traveling around, visiting the cities, talking with your users. One advantage, it sounds like you have the same, is when we go to New York or Washington, D.C. or Seattle or Texas or wherever we are, we use our internal database of users, find local folks and say, hey, we're going to host an event, put it up on Meetup. And then, we fill 30 to 40% of the seats with those people, have great substantial conversations and learn things that we're shocked by, and we build a better product. Plus, and I think what's even better is you get these user stories from these fantastic people who, I talked with somebody, we're going to write a story in this, so I won't go too much, but she was a former teacher who became, her team's best-selling, by far, sales rep. And you wouldn't get that unless you went out and met your customers.
I think my favorite thing is when I see users using our product in a way that we actually didn't anticipate. Some of our biggest use cases were actually, when we created ManageFlitter, it was actually to clean up your Twitter account, not to actually, it wasn't specifically to grow your Twitter account. And then people started using it as a tool to actually manage and grow your account in the right way. And that was totally serendipitous. And I guess that's the advantage of just building something and putting it out there and iterating on it. Facebook even, it was started as a university equivalent for the physical book, right? And now it's, look at all the things it is now. So evolving products is definitely one of the exciting parts of working on these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other thing to add is that, if you look at someone like Mark Zuckerberg, just to kind of reinforce your point, is when he started the business, the idea was, I want to put up a picture with a name and maybe a small bio and essentially make it easy for my class to see that. And now you look at it, you've got things like WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook and Messenger that are all diverse products serving diverse audiences. He's built an empire on that. And I think more importantly, he's been there at that helm, kind of focused on getting the company through every stage and being very iterative. So I think, like to your point earlier about being a founder, a creator, somebody who's building something, is you really just have to be willing to continue to plug along and be really thoughtful about what you're doing the whole time. And also just realize it's just really, really, really hard. And it's something that I think a lot of people misunderstand about entrepreneurship. It's not easy. There's great rewards, not necessarily financial. A lot of it is the fact that you feel like you've formed this thing out of a ball of clay. And I think he, and it sounds like you guys at ManageFlitter, are also seeing and experiencing that same thing.
Yeah, definitely the difficult parts. I can certainly, it needs to be a bit of a calling, but we're all lucky to work in a fantastic industry and be part of this fantastic, the shifts and the changes and the fact that we can build businesses. I'm looking out over Atlassian's offices as we speak, their HQ in Sydney, and two guys at university built this product now with a market cap of, I think it's about $10 billion or so, their market cap, which is probably, heading towards the market cap of Twitter, which is quite, it's quite remarkable to think about. Those companies are almost at the same market cap. A company that was bootstrapped for most of its evolution is the same influence of a company where the US president uses as his megaphone. So that's the industry we're in, and we're very lucky to be a part of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Very lucky to be part of this.
Scott Smith, thank you so much for joining us. We'll put the links to CloudApp. So Scott's the VP of Sales at CloudApp. If you do screenshotting, which I think we all do, and you're involved in product development, it really looks like a great tool. I'm gonna give it a whirl. So to check out CloudApp. It's a great price point, and we'll put all the links to the show notes and Scott's details as well if you want to be in touch with him. Scott, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you guys.
The It's a Monkey podcast is brought to you by CheckDog. Use CheckDog to easily review and monitor your website for spelling errors, broken links, and broken images, all with the push of one button. CheckDog can also automatically monitor your website and notify you of newly introduced spelling errors. Go to checkdog.com/podcast to receive 50% off your first month subscription. CheckDog.com, helping the world's leading websites keep their content error-free.
Really interesting, Kate, getting someone who's been on the inside of Facebook and some of our discussions around Facebook. As I mentioned to Scott, they clearly doing a huge amount right and have some incredibly smart people there. And we spoke about Sheryl Sandberg and the work that she's done there. And I've read her book Option B, which is a fantastic book. Have you heard it? You must have heard about her book Option B.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I haven't read. I've only read Lean In.
Okay, I haven't read Lean In.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah, she's smart. She's
Very
smart.
smart.
She gives a lot of, she's articulate and clear. And Option B is fantastic. And I actually loaded I installed CloudApp.
Yeah.
After the chat, I used another product which was also pretty good, but actually since I installed the new version of Mac OS, somehow my browser, everything's been sort of messed up, and I had to reinstall a whole heap of stuff. So I thought, well, I'll just install CloudApp. I like it.
Yeah, it's really good.
I like it.
I'm not sure where I found it or whether Joe found it. I'm not too sure, but it's really good. Like you crop out videos, crop out images. You can even make short GIFs, all from inside. Like it's sort of an app on your computer. So it's not limited to Chrome, which was sort of the tool I was using before was a Chrome extension. So you could only use it inside Chrome. Now I can, with CloudApp, I take screenshots of any window
Okay,
on my
interesting.
computer. Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I mean, most of my screenshots are doing Chrome, but yeah, you're right. Sometimes there's probably a use case for not in Chrome.
For me, there
outside of
is,
Chrome.
like with designs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm always flicking things to devs and stuff like that out of Photoshop or Sketch or things like that.
Yeah, interesting. So if you're looking, I mean, we all spend our lives taking screenshots. I remember in the old days with DOS machines, it was really complex to take screenshots. It was something that was, there were third-party programs, and it was just, really, now the world is based on, I mean, the press, half of the press is screenshot. People screenshot controversial tweets in case people delete them. Same with Facebook, they screenshot and hang on to stuff, and it's with people that use these graphical user interfaces of today, it all seems so easy. But what's been so interesting is actually seeing the evolution where we come from, the DOS-based text only, and how doing things like screenshots were really, really tricky because it wasn't at its at its heart. You know, did you ever use DOS-based machines?
No.
You didn't have the pleasure, and now you don't
No.
use Linux-based command line either.
No.
So
Went from, I don't even know what it was, just a PC, one of the big chunky, you know, the beige, they were sort of beigey coloured.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was our first computer.
Why did
And
they
then-
choose beige?
I'm not sure.
Such an ugly color.
Oh, it's sort of trendy on walls.
Is it?
I don't know. They've definitely gone away from it now. Everything's silver, black, white. But yeah, that was our first computer at home. And then I got a Asus notebook, I think it was, in high school that I used for my HSC. And then ever since I've been on Apple Macs. Yeah. No looking back.
No looking back. Same. I've been on Mac for quite a while, and I love the stability of it. I think PCs have improved a lot, but in the early days of PC laptops, the crashing and everything was just an absolute nightmare. But I screenshot all the ManageFlitter shout-outs. We get quite a few every now and then. Someone, you know, maybe once or twice a day. Sometimes a bit more. We grateful to receive people saying nice things about our products, and I screenshot them. So I've got a whole folder filled with ManageFlitter shout-outs.
CloudApp would help you with that too, because they save the screenshots into like a cloud-based thing, so you don't have to clutter your desktop screen. Yeah,
because that is the problem. What I'd like to do is, can you do it with CloudApp? Can you expire screenshots?
As in put an expiry date on them to delete them? No, don't believe so.
That's what I'd like to do, is take a screen, because sometimes I'm taking a screenshot just to email or to include in Slack, but I don't want to clutter up wherever screenshots are stored. You know, after a day, it can just, because every now and then I go through my folder with screenshots and just delete 3/4 of them, because some of them were just, you know, temporary to show something to someone.
It's true. You probably could. But not off the top of my head, no. CloudApp have been really smart with their integrations. So they've got a Jira in Atlassian integration and one on Zendesk, I believe, as well. I heard him talking about. I've only used the Jira one, but it's actually quite good. Keeps it all inside Jira, and it basically pulls in the screenshots that you've put into the cloud and says, which one of these did you want to add to this story? And I say, that one. So I don't have to open up images and find it on the desktop and all that sort of stuff. It's already all in there. So
with a bit of effort these days, you know, if you get really organized, it's all about that, right? It's getting really organized, making all your Slack talk to your email, talk to your screenshotting software, and getting super organized with it. And it does help a lot. Yeah.
I think to CloudApp's strength, it would be their reach out and stuff. Like I started chatting to some of them on Twitter because I think I tagged CloudApp once. And then since then, they email me to ask me for their thoughts and feedback on the Jira integration. They did the same with Joe as well. And I think at one stage there, I even got an email from one of the team members asking if I was going to be at the Atlassian Summit in San Diego. So somehow they've figured out my location when I was in Whistler in North America and said, are you going to be there? The CEO wants to meet some users.
From that smart pill. They hacked into that smart pill that you take.
No smart pills for Kate. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. And the way they sort of reach out like that. And that's also how you got the interview with Scott, was I tweeted him and he came back, yeah, for sure. So
it's good. I mean, I think dialogue with the customers is so important, and there's so much gold there. And these days, it's so easy to have dialogue with your customers. It's something that smaller businesses like ourselves, it's hard to get bandwidth to do that sometimes when you're putting out fires and things like that. But it's definitely something that we also just, over the years, we've tried to always up the ante on dialogue with customers. The people using your product, they're always sitting on goldmine of information. I mean, think of when you travel on an airline, right? If someone would come to you and would say, hey, I want to chat to you about your experience. Someone from the airline came to you, you know, how was the check-in? How was, you know, queuing up? How was in flight, the food? You would probably have quite a bit to say about it, right?
if I had a somewhat negative experience, yes. I think when people have experiences that don't go to their expectations, they have more to say. If it went smoothly, then they go, yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it's something that I think, how often have I been asked my opinion on products that I love, or even products that I don't love, or products that I use very, very, very regularly? Very seldom.
No, it's refreshing. It's refreshing.
What I don't like is when you call up for customer service somewhere these days, right? And then they bombard the hell out of you about how did we do.
Yeah, at the end. Banks are notorious for that.
On the phone, on text, on email. It's like, it's too much. I can see what they're trying to do, but it's really just too much. But in terms of being proactive, and like if my bank called me up and said, hey, I'd love to come over for coffee for 15 minutes and I'll just want to chat to you about, sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
They're almost better when which they still do, I know, but when they ring you out of the blue and say, have you got 15 minutes? I just want to talk in general.
It's no.
They got a better, to me, they have a better chance than when they try and tack it on the end of my issue.
Yeah.
So I ring them and
because
say,
you're not in that headspace.
Yeah, like I've obviously got something to do. There's a problem that's stopping me and I want to get back to it, but you're asking me for how you went, and how the experience was. Like I'm not really in the mood to do that. I just want my problem fixed and I want to go back to what I was doing. But if you ring me and I happen to be commuting or something like that and you just want to chat for 10 minutes, then you've actually got a better chance.
Well, also social media monitoring and web monitoring is very important for your brand.
Yeah.
Right. So I use a product called Brand24 that crawls social media, crawls the web, and when someone mentions ManageFlitter, it pings me into a Slack channel. Right. So you really need to do that because that's gold in terms of feedback. Like yesterday I shared, I'm sure you read in the Slack channel, someone wrote a blog article about ManageFlitter and it was mostly complimentary, but it was interesting that she had misunderstood some of the feature sets and thinking that it didn't include scheduling posts, right, in the paid plans. And it gave me the opportunity to reach out to her to explain it, but also the opportunity for us to think, are we missing something? Are we not communicating clearly? And I would have missed that. She's an author. It's a sort of almost hobbyist blog. Yep. I would have never stumbled upon it, right?
No, unless you were monitoring it.
Unless you're monitoring it. So monitoring all your mentions and any mention on the web and on social, and super easy to do.
Yeah.
Super easy to do, and have it in a passive way, just sitting there and just pinging you. Even if you're a small business, I'm sure these days locally you may get mentioned somewhere or something. It's worth, even if you don't get mentioned, at least you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it if someone mentions you, right?
It's true. And a lot of the time too, people tweet about good or bad experiences and not necessarily tag the company. They'll just use the words.
Exactly.
And if you're watching, you can, gauge sentiment as well.
You can miss it if they don't tag you, but they mention you. And sometimes people do tweet. Sometimes they tag us, which is easier for us to see in Twitter or Facebook. But sometimes they'll just use the word ManageFlitter. And the only way that I see it is through my monitoring.
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise I wouldn't have picked it up. Yeah, so we can all learn from each other. We all do certain things better, certain things other companies do better, so we can all learn. Anyway, that's episode 109 of the It's a Monkey podcast. Please feel free to tweet us, email us. You can email us at podcast@itsamonkey.com if you want to be on the show, if you have ideas for guests, if you want to even promote your company, send us through 30 seconds. We call it the Startup Minute. We haven't had a few for a while. No cost. Just tell us a little bit about your startup. We'll link to it in the show notes. So thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Special thank you if you're the first time listener. Subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We also appreciate iTunes reviews. If you take 1 minute, it helps other people find our podcast, and we very much appreciate that. So hope you have a good week and probably push out another podcast in about a week or so. Thanks for listening.